The June 2nd edition of the Oklahoma City Water Utilities Trust will be in session. And the first item of business is the approval of the minutes from the May 19th meeting.
Move approval. Second.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved. I don't know why I said that.
Old school.
I can never get used to that. Next item is the consent docket.
Move the consent docket subject to individual consideration. Second.
A motion and a second on the consent docket. Are there matters to be discussed separately or comments from staff?
Mr. Chairman, I would just note that your item 3F reinstates an emergency repair contract. We're preparing for summer and the potential for unusually large numbers of waterline breaks, as does sometimes happen in the summer. So we have contractors available to assist us if we exceed our capabilities.
Further questions or comments? Voting, please. Consent docket's approved. Excuse me. Next item, emergency construction contract.
Move the item. Second.
Motion and a second to approve item 4. Comments or questions?
This was storm damage from the first heavy rains occurring around May 8th and 9th, heavy water flows, which, as you know, have continued.
Okay. Voting, please. Contract's approved. Or the resolution is ratified. Got it. Anyway, the next item is the Cross Timbers Riders Association Annual Deliverables Report. Is there someone here to talk to us about it, or is it just here to be received?
Mr. Chairman, I intend to receive the report, but I'm sure Lisa Hubble would be happy to give us a few details about the report.
Good afternoon, Chairman and trustees. As every year, the Cross Riders Association submitted their annual report. They have, other than announcing the special events that they have, which is the Enduro Ride, and it's typically in October, I believe. They have a request to change the permit dates, which we will be negotiating with them in the coming weeks. They also have a request to expand their lease area. They're interested in the former property that we used for Quail Ridge Shooting Association. They would like to prepare that area for like children's events related to off-road vehicles. So we will be negotiating with them, and we'll bring back an agreement in the next month or so for your consideration. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Well, the impact that this association and this agreement that we have on the lake itself, on just the quality of what goes on out there, has really been a positive thing. It's really positive. Very good. I guess we need a motion to receive the report, or do we not?
Move we receive the report. Second.
A motion and a second to receive the report. Voting, please. Report's received. Thank you. We do not need executive session.
Why don't we do that today? It's going to be a short meeting, and this might be a good time to spend 5 or 10 minutes on that and give a quick update. So I move we go into executive session.
Okay.
Second.
A motion and a second to move it to executive session. So moved. Item from trustees. This will be a short one. Any comments from trustees?
Marshall, let's talk just a little bit about the water situation. Obviously, we had, it's the wettest, May was the wettest month in the history of Oklahoma. If you're not going to fill your lakes in, when are you going to fill your lakes? And so you got into a situation where Hefner is a little over a half foot over being full. And what Overholser is right at full?
Overholser is technically about half foot under full, but there are 200 or 300 CFS coming down the river, and the staff is committed to filling the lake. So you can imagine, you have this capacity to take water, and it's a wonderful thing when it comes, when it is reaching very high levels of flow, and you're putting it in a small lake like Overholser, you have to be careful with that. So I've truly been waiting for the flow to go down. We're also anticipating some more rain later this week, having an impact on whether we put more water in Lake Havasu.
Okay. The Draper, of course, is as full as we can get it. It's really overfull. McGee Creek was like 17 feet into the flood pool.
It was. It is down to, it is actually now at the very top of its flood pool, which is about 10 feet over the conservation pool with the basic water supply pool.
Okay, now McGee Creek and Canton both have flood control purposes. None of our other reservoirs have flood control purposes.
That's right.
With them.
Lake Canton remains about 9 feet down. It has come up in the last 45 days. It's up about 4 feet, but that is where it sits, and again, we'll see what happens with rain. It's much improved over as good as it has been since 2013.
So over the last 3-4 years, we haven't had the drought of record, but it's been a significant drought. It's been one of the top probably 4 droughts of record.
Yes.
In the history of Oklahoma. And so as we're coming out of that, we have 5 of our 6 lakes that are overfull, just slightly under overfull. Canton is not full. I think there's a number of reasons for that. There's new stock dams being built out there. There's pumping of the aquifer. There's a lot of reasons that Canton is probably not full at this point in time. And Sardis, although we don't have access to Sardis as of yet, Sardis is also full.
It's been about 10 feet into the flood
pool. So coming out of not the drought of record, but a significant drought, it's really made a significant turnaround within just a few weeks.
Yeah, and precisely what happened historically has happened for us is a heavy rain will come and end the drought. I think we'll want to look at the data about Lake Sardis and what has happened, and as that information becomes available, we'll bring you some more information about what's going on in the western supplies that have a groundwater relationship. Today, McGee Creek is just inside its flood pool for the first time in a month. Lake Atoka has been flowing over the dam because it has no flood pool since May the 8th, and reached about 7 feet over the dam, almost 7 feet over the dam, is now at 1.5 feet. The staff has been monitoring the flow, and of course, as is true after all floods, we are working on assessing damages. Line maintenance has been out looking at creek crossings multiple times during the rain events to make certain that our pipes are still carrying sewage. They've been out looking at main breaks and things like that, and particularly looking at our infrastructure near both the Oklahoma River, the North Canadian, and the South Canadian River for erosion along those major waterways, which have both had a good deal of flooding over the last month or so. Not expecting anything major. It's just what we do after a large, heavy rain. Moving to the general manager's report, just so you know, we're about 4% behind on water revenue behind forecasts, but we're about 4% behind expenses. And that has to do with weather, frankly. On wastewater, we're about 2.9% behind on revenues and 5% below expenses at this time. Again, expecting some cleanup kinds of expenses coming as we dry up.
Do we know how long we've been keeping statistics with regard to the percentage of capacity? The trigger figure that we have for doing different things with the conservation IP. How long have we been keeping statistics on that?
I don't think we've been doing it back when I was director. It was never done in a cumulative way. I just assume there's records that could go back on the individual lakes, Marcia, but I don't know how far back we got.
Yes, we had some work done on the North Canadian. So we have some relative ideas about flows in the North Canadian. In the southeastern lakes, it's that long-term data that's we can obtain. I have a hard time saying that, so we can find the data, and we're looking at it.
Well, I'm not asking you to do that. I'm just curiosity. I want, we were down around 51 not long ago, and I just wonder, had we been historically, is that a low, the 51? Was that a low, or have we been substantially below that in years past?
It's my belief, based on what we have read about the drought of the 1950s that caused us to build the water supply of the southeast, that we were perhaps lower than 50%
At that time,
in the
we
drought of
only
the
had
50s. Hefner and
Overholser and
Overholser.
Canton and,
Well, actually,
But
we
we
didn't
didn't
have
have Canton.
Canton. We had access to Canton occasionally.
right. Okay.
So we are taking,
Would it be safe to say that since that time, this is probably before it started raining, this was as bad as it had ever been?
Well,
I'm not getting ready to say
no,
that.
I think, it was obviously during the 30s when we only had Overholser was a significant time during that drought, and in the 50s, the 30s and the 50s, the Dust Bowl days, and then the actual route of history is the 50s, right?
That's what I
In the
understand,
mid-50s.
yeah.
And I think at that time, Councilman, it was probably a little worse at that point in time, but we're splitting hairs here.
Right. Well, I'm just thinking about benchmarking it from the time that we really started aggressively to accumulate storage capacity, like we did first in the 30s, and then we did it again in the 50s, 60s. Has it been, I just wonder if it had been as bad since that time. I understand we got there. When we used to depend on wells, it wasn't as a statistic that would have mattered much. Well, certainly doesn't matter as much as it does now when you don't depend on wells at all.
we'll take a look at the data. Typically at the end of a drought, and I think generally that's been declared by the climatologists, we then start to look at the holistic shape of the drought. It is always a very long-term analysis where they look at how long it took for it to start, what the indicators were that you were in it. And that's helpful to us as we go forward. It's been quite a while since we've had this kind of an event. It will be actually helpful to us in how we plan to manage the water supply and delivery to customers, both.
Okay, thank you. Any other items from, under items from trustees, I want to thank the staff for recreating and installing that plaque that's at the Oklahoma City end of the Atoka pipeline that had been there for 50 years and had been vandalized. This weekend I had a chance to see it. It was nice to see it again, being there, because people that built the pipeline, considering the sacrifices they made, many of them made serious political sacrifices to do that. I feel good about seeing that back up again. Any citizens to be heard? We will go to executive session and be back.